For a long time now, doctors have had this guidebook to help navigate the incredible complexities of the human mind. It's called the DSM. But what happens when the map you're using doesn't really match the territory you're exploring? Well, with its fifth edition, the DSM-5, that map wasn't just tweaked, it was completely redrawn. Seriously, think about that for a second. How would you do it? It's a huge question, right? Do you group things by symptoms or by what causes them? The people behind the DSM-5 had to tackle this exact problem, and their solution was a total break from the past. So the old map was all about these really rigid categories. It put every disorder into its own neat little box. But the new map, it does something way more intuitive and honestly a lot more human. It actually follows the human lifespan, showing how its symptoms can change and even overlap as we go through life. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. Those strict boxes from the older versions, they just didn't reflect the messy, complicated reality of how people actually live and experience things. The new structure was built to change that. So let's start with part one, why this guidebook needed a revision in the first place. And that need for a rewrite led to this, the new lifespan blueprint. The big idea was to organize the whole thing chronologically. This chronological flow is now really the heart of the DSM-5. It kicks off with conditions you typically see in childhood, then it moves through the challenges of adolescence and adulthood, and it finishes with those that are more common later in life. It's a journey that kind of mirrors our own. You know, to really get how this new map works, I think the best way is to actually use it. So let's follow a hypothetical person on their life's journey and see how this new structure helps us understand what they might be going through at different stages. All right, our journey begins right where the DSM-5 does, in the earliest years of life. This is where all those foundational building blocks of development are being put into place. So the first chapters a doctor would look at for a young child cover these groups. And it makes sense, right? These are things that usually show up before grade school, and they're really foundational. They can affect a child's basic development, behavior, and even self-control. The absolute cornerstone here is the chapter on neurodevelopmental disorders. This is where you'll find conditions like ADHD and autism spectrum disorder. They're defined by developmental issues that appear early and can have a real impact on a person's ability to function in all parts of their life. Okay, so as our person grows up, moving into their teens and 20s, the map shifts. It starts to reflect the totally unique challenges that come with young adulthood. This is such a critical time in life. The DSM-5 actually groups all these major conditions together because so often they first start to show up as a person is navigating all the new complexities of being a young adult, anywhere from the late teens to the mid-30s. And the structure itself is really clever. It gives us clinical clues. Take bipolar disorders, for instance. They're deliberately placed right in between psychotic and depressive disorders, kind of like a bridge. And that's not random at all. It's a nod to their shared symptoms and genetics, and it encourages doctors to think about a wider spectrum of possibilities. So, let's keep going on our journey. Now we're arriving at the final chapters of this main diagnostic section, the part that deals with the health challenges that are most relevant to older adulthood. The main category here at the end of this lifespan journey is neurocognitive disorders. This is where a clinician would find conditions like those related to Alzheimer's disease, things characterized by a decline in cognitive abilities later on in life. And this is just a brilliant example of why the lifespan approach makes so much sense. See that key word? Acquired. This decline in function is something that happens later in life. That's what makes it different from the neurodevelopmental disorders we talked about at the very beginning of our journey, which are there from early on. It creates these perfect, logical bookends to the whole story. So we've walked through the new map, but why does this reorganization really matter? I mean, it's so much more than just shuffling chapters around in a textbook. The most important takeaway is that this redesign had very clear, very practical goals. It was all about making the manual more useful for doctors day to day. It was meant to spark new research into how different disorders might be linked, and it helps align with global standards like the World Health Organization's ICD. And maybe most importantly, it can help doctors communicate a diagnosis to patients and their families in a way that makes more sense. Ultimately, this new structure was never meant to be the final word on everything. It was designed from the ground up to be a living document, a flexible framework that can change and grow as our understanding of the brain gets better. It can adapt to new discoveries in genetics and neuroscience without needing another massive overhaul every time. And that leaves us with a really fascinating thought, doesn't it? If this map of the mind is designed to change and evolve right alongside our knowledge, What new territories might it chart in the years to come? What new chapters are just waiting to be written?